Get away from my aircraft, baggage kid, before I have you dragged off this ramp. Captain Blake Harlan's voice cracked through the open cockpit window, sharp enough to cut through the whine of the auxiliary power unit. Marcus Reed stood below him in a yellow ramp vest, one hand raised in the universal sign for stop, the other pointing toward the right engine. "Don't start the engine," he said, breath tight but steady. "Please, Captain, don't start it." Two ramp workers froze beside the baggage cart. A flight attendant stopped halfway up the stairs. Inside the cabin, a little girl pressed her face to the oval window, her stuffed bear mashed against the glass. No one moved to help Marcus. They only looked at his vest, his age, his skin, the job title clipped to his chest, and decided he was already out of place. Blake leaned farther out, aviator sunglasses reflecting the white private jet and the boy beneath it. "You hear me?" "Step back." Marcus didn't. The hot Georgia air shimmered above the concrete. The engine cowling gleamed under noon sun. Near the number 2 fuel coupling, a dark wet line caught the light, so thin it could have been mistaken for shadow. Marcus saw it, smelled it too. Not rainwater, not condensation. Jet A. His fingers curled once around the orange safety tag tucked inside his vest pocket, the old one with the cracked plastic edge and his father's faded handwriting. Then he let it go and raised both hands where everyone could see them. "Sir," he said, careful, controlled. "That's not condensation." A laugh came from somewhere near the lounge door, small and nervous, like the person who made it wanted Blake to know which side they were on. Ray Calder, the ramp supervisor, strode across the painted safety line with his radio bouncing against his belt. "Marcus," he snapped under his breath, but loud enough for the crew to hear. "What you doing?" Marcus kept his eyes on the engine. There's a fuel smell by the number 2 coupling. Safety wire looks off. The vibration changed when the APU loaded. Blake's jaw hardened. "The vibration changed," he repeated, turning the words into a joke. "You've been flying long, son." A few people smiled because the captain smiled first. Marcus didn't answer the insult. The APU whined higher, a thin metallic scream under the belly of the jet. He could feel it in his teeth. On the boarding stairs, the flight attendant lowered her hand from the railing and glanced toward the cockpit, then toward Marcus, then back again, caught between uniform and warning. Behind the glass wall of the terminal, 3 VIP passengers watched with drinks in their hands, irritated by the delay more than the danger. Blake tapped the checklist clip beside him. "Pre-flight is complete. Maintenance, clear this aircraft. My panel is clean. You low bags. Ich fliege jets." That arrangement has worked beautifully until now. Marcus swallowed once. He could feel sweat sliding down the back of his neck, but his voice stayed low. "Maintenance didn't clear what I'm looking at." Ray's face changed fast, a flash of something that wasn't anger at first. Fear, maybe. Then anger covered it. "That's enough." He stepped in front of Marcus, blocking his view of the engine. "You do not make technical calls on this ramp. You do not speak to a captain like that. And you do not hold up a VIP departure because you think you smelled something." "I did smell it," Marcus said, "and it's spreading." Blake pulled off his sunglasses. His eyes were pale, tired, and furious. "Kid, do you know what 1 minute of delay costs on a flight like this?" Marcus looked past him through the cockpit window at the small movement of Blake's hand near the start panel. "Less than a funeral." The ramp went quiet. Not fully. The APU still screamed. A cart engine idled near the service gate. Somewhere, a radio hissed static. But the people stopped shifting. The little girl in the window stopped moving her bear. Ray turned slowly, as if Marcus had slapped him in public. Blake stared down at him, and for the first time his smile disappeared. "What did you just say to me?" Marcus's throat tightened. He had not meant to say it like that. He had heard his father's voice inside his own, the way Earl Reed used to say a machine whispered before it screamed. He saw, for half a second, hands blackened with oil, an orange tag swinging from a toolbox, a hanger light flickering after midnight. Then the memory was gone, replaced by Blake's cockpit, Ray's radio, the wet line shining under engine number 2. Marcus lifted one hand again, slower this time. Not defiant, not dramatic, just certain. "Please don't start that engine." Ray grabbed his shoulder. Not hard enough to hurt, but hard enough for everyone to see ownership. "You're done." Blake gave a dry laugh and slid his sunglasses back on. "Remove him from the ramp." The flight attendant's lips parted, but no sound came out. One of the ramp workers looked down at his boots. Another took half a step forward, then stopped when Ray glanced at him. Marcus didn't fight Ray's hand. He only twisted enough to look one last time at the coupling. The wet line had grown. A single drop formed, trembled in the heat, then fell onto the concrete and vanished like it had never existed. From inside the cockpit came a soft electronic chime. Not an alarm. Not yet. Just one small, polite sound from a machine no one else was listening to. Blake looked down at his checklist and said, "Start sequence continues." The orange safety tag made a soft clicking sound against the kitchen table every time Marcus Reed's thumb passed over its cracked edge. Click. Pause. Click. The plastic had faded from bright warning orange to the color of old rust, and the black marker across the front had blurred where years of oil and sweat had touched it. Still, if he tilted it toward the weak morning light, he could read his father's handwriting. Never sign off what still feels wrong. Marcus sat in the kitchen before sunrise, fully dressed in his ramp uniform, while the apartment around him stayed quiet. The stove clock blinked 5:18. A loose window rattled every few seconds from the low thunder of aircraft climbing out of Atlanta. His mother, Denise, slept in the next room with the television still glowing blue against the wall, one hand resting on a folded heating pad she used after double shifts at the laundry. Marcus moved carefully so the chair legs would not scrape. He poured the last of yesterday's coffee into a chipped mug, added water, warmed it in the microwave, and left it beside her medicine with 2 crackers on a napkin. Then he checked the envelope under the sugar jar. Rent notice. Final reminder. He put it back before she could see how many times he had unfolded it. On the counter sat his training book, corners bent, pages filled with tiny notes. Fuel systems, couplings, pressure, vibration. He had copied diagrams until the lines lived somewhere behind his eyes. He did not have an AMP license. Not yet. At the terminal, that meant people heard his vest before they heard his voice. Trainee, loader, kid. But at this kitchen table, with his father's tag in his palm, Marcus could still hear Earl Reed leaning over an open engine and saying, "Listen first. Machines don't lie. People do." He closed the book when Denise stirred. "Baby." Her voice was rough from sleep. "You leaving already?" "Early shift," Marcus said, standing. VIP departure moved up. She pushed herself onto one elbow, squinting at him through the dim room. "Marcus, promise me you won't get into it with anybody today." He smiled because she needed him to. "I don't get into it. You know what I mean?" The smile faded a little. Denise looked toward the tag in his hand. She never told him to throw it away. She also never liked seeing it. Your father spoke up every time something felt wrong. Her throat tightened on the last word, and the men above him still wrote their reports like he was the problem. Marcus slid the tag into his vest pocket, slow. He wasn't. "I know." She looked down at her hands. But knowing didn't bring him home. The apartment filled with the hum of the refrigerator. Outside, another jet rolled across the sky, deep and distant. Marcus crossed the room and fixed the corner of her blanket where it had slipped off her feet. He did it without thinking, the way Earl used to tighten a bolt after everyone else had walked away, not because anyone praised him for it, but because loose things became dangerous if you ignored them long enough. Have you ever seen something wrong and been told to keep quiet because your voice came from the wrong uniform? Marcus had learned that kind of silence early. At 15, he had watched men in clean shirts call his father emotional for refusing to clear a ground unit with a heat scar under the panel. At 16, he had sat beside his mother in a folding chair while a company lawyer said Earl had failed to follow procedure. At 18, he had taken the first airport job that would let him stand close enough to engines to learn their language, even if the badge on his chest told everyone he was only there to lift bags. Before leaving, Marcus opened the cabinet under the sink and tightened the little valve that made the faucet drip. 1/4 turn. Just enough. Denise watched him from the couch. "Your daddy used to do that." Marcus picked up his lunch bag. It was lighter than yesterday. "He taught me not to waste what can be fixed." His phone buzzed on the table. Ray Calder's name lit the screen. Under it, a staff message flashed in all caps. In 742K VIP departure. Wheels up 1200. Novelis. Marcus stared at the tail number. He knew that jet. White fuselage, blue stripe, right engine, always a little rough at idle. Another message appeared before the screen went dark. Captain, Harlan requests clean ramp. Keep trainees away from cockpit. Denise saw his face change. What is it? Marcus slipped the phone into his pocket and touched the orange safety tag once through the fabric. Just work, he said. But as he reached for the door, the tag shifted loose and fell against the floor with a small plastic snap. Marcus bent to pick it up, and for one breath, his father's handwriting faced the ceiling like a warning already waiting for him. The badge scanner at the employee entrance blinked red before it blinked green, just long enough for the security guard to look Marcus read up and down like the machine had confirmed something he already believed. Ramp trainees use the side lane, the guard said, even though Marcus was already standing in the side lane. Marcus nodded once, waited for the gate to click open, and stepped through with his lunch bag in one hand and the orange safety tag hidden warm against his chest. Behind him, a pilot in a pressed navy blazer walked through the main door without scanning at all. No one stopped him. No one asked twice. The private terminal looked different from the employee corridor. Out front, glass walls caught the morning sun. Inside, leather chairs sat around polished tables, and a woman in a cream suit arranged bottled water beside a silver tray of pastries no ramp worker would touch. Marcus crossed the service hall where the floor changed from marble to gray concrete, where the air smelled less like coffee and more like fuel, rubber, and heat. A catering cart rolled past him too fast. One will hit a seam in the floor, and a stack of napkins slid toward the edge. Marcus caught them before they scattered. The young woman pushing the cart whispered, "Thanks." Her supervisor, standing by the lounge door, didn't look at Marcus. "Don't block the corridor," he said. Marcus moved aside. He didn't say the napkins would have fallen without him. He didn't need credit for stopping something small from becoming a mess. On the ramp board, the tail numbers glowed in blue letters. N742K sat third from the top. VIP departure. Wheels up 1200. Marcus stopped for half a second. The orange tag shifted in his pocket, tapping once against his badge. He reached up and pressed it flat, a quiet habit now. Ray Calder stood near the dispatch counter with a tablet tucked under his arm and a coffee cup in his hand. He was already talking before Marcus reached him. "You're late." Marcus looked at the wall clock. "I'm 9 minutes early. Not for this flight." Ray jabbed a finger toward the ramp board. "Bags from the black Escalade. Lav truck stays clear. No chatting with cabin crew. No stepping inside the painted red zone unless I tell you." And Marcus? He leaned closer, lowering his voice just enough to make it meaner. "No plane mechanic today." A baggage handler nearby smirked into his sleeve. Another looked away. Marcus kept his face still. "Yes, sir." Ray's tablet buzzed. He glanced down, thumbed the screen, and Marcus caught only a flash before Ray tilted it away. Maintenance note. N742K. Right engine idle roughness. Status closed. Marcus's eyes held on that word a beat too long. Ray noticed. "Something interesting?" "Just saw the tail number," Marcus said. "Then see the bags." Ray snapped the tablet cover shut. "That's what you're paid to notice." Marcus walked toward the ramp door with the other handlers. Through the glass, and 742K waited in the sun, white fuselage, blue stripe, stares down, nose pointed toward the taxi lane. Captain Blake Harlan stood near the jet with his sunglasses on and his headset hanging around his neck, laughing with a man in a tailored suit. Everyone around Blake gave him space without being asked. Even Ray straightened when he saw him. A small boy from the catering crew dropped a case of water near the threshold, and plastic bottles rolled across the concrete. Two rolled toward the safety line. Marcus set down his lunch bag, scooped them up, and guided the boy back before a tug could turn through. "Keep your head on the swivel," Marcus said softly. "Ramp doesn't forgive daydreaming." The boy nodded, cheeks burning. "Thanks, man." Ray barked from behind them. "I didn't assign you babysitting." The laughter near the jet paused. Blake turned his head slightly, just enough to register Marcus, the young black trainee in a vest with a scuffed lunch bag and dust on his boots. Then Blake looked past him as if the ramp had produced another traffic cone. Marcus picked up the last bottle and placed it back in the case. As he straightened, the APU on N742K spooled up. The sound spread across the concrete, low at first, then sharper, threading itself under the other ramp noise. Marcus's hand froze on the cardboard. Something in the rhythm caught. Not loud, not dramatic. A tiny, uneven tremor buried beneath the whine. His eyes moved to the right side of the aircraft. Heat shimmer bent the air around engine number 2. Ray's radio crackled. Harlan wants this ramp clean in 10. Ray pointed at Marcus without turning. You heard him. Bags. Now. Marcus lifted his lunch bag, but his gaze stayed on the engine. The orange safety tag pressed against his chest like a second heartbeat. From somewhere inside the jet, a soft systems chime sounded once, and Marcus took one slow step toward the painted line. Marcus stopped with the toe of his boot just short of the painted red line. The rule was simple. Trainees did not cross unless a supervisor cleared them. Ray had repeated it so many times it lived in Marcus's bones. But the sound coming from N742K did not care about rules. It wavered under the APU whine, a small, uneven flutter that most people would have swallowed inside the noise of carts, radios, and jet wash. Marcus heard anyway. He set the case of water down and tilted his head. 1 second. 2. There was again. A soft catch in the rhythm, like a breath snagging in someone's chest. Reed, Ray called sharper now. I said Bags. Marcus did not answer right away. His eyes moved along the right side of the aircraft, from the polished fuselage to the engine cowling, then lower, where the heat shimmer bent the sunlight above the concrete. Something dark glimmered near the number 2 fuel coupling. Not much. A line thinner than a pencil mark. He stepped closer, still outside the boundary, and lowered himself just enough to look without touching anything. The smell reached him then. Faint. Sweet. Chemical. Jet A. His fingers found the orange safety tag through his vest, pressing into the old plastic like a pulse. Earl Reed's voice rose from memory, quiet as a hand on his shoulder. If you smell it before you see it, don't wait until everybody else catches up. Marcus pulled out his phone and took one photo before anyone noticed. The camera clicked too loudly in his own ears. A ramp worker behind him muttered, "Man, don't do that." Marcus zoomed in. The safety wire around the coupling sat at the wrong angle. Not broken, not obvious, just not right. A person rushing would miss it. A person expecting the aircraft to be clean would never look twice. That wire's not sitting right, Marcus said. His voice was low, but the words carried because everyone around him had gone quiet enough to hear. Ray walked toward him fast. What wire? Number 2 fuel coupling. There's moisture around it, and the smell isn't hydraulic. Ray's face tightened. You're not qualified to call that. Marcus kept his eyes on the engine. I'm not calling it. I'm asking you to look. Captain Blake Harlan turned from the man in the tailored suit and removed one side of his headset. Is there a problem over there, Ray? Ray forced a laugh that did not land. No problem, Captain. Trainee thinks he discovered aviation. A few people smiled. The catering boy did not. He looked from Marcus to the engine and took one careful step backward. Blake started down the aircraft stairs with that slow, irritated confidence men used when they knew uniforms would part the world for them. What's your name? Marcus Reed, sir. Marcus Reed. Blake repeated it like he was reading a warning label on something cheap. Do you understand what pre-flight means? Marcus looked at him. Yes, sir. Do you understand that licensed professionals inspected this aircraft before you got here with your lunch bag? Yes, sir. Then why are you standing there pointing at my engine like you found the missing piece of a puzzle? Marcus let the insult pass, because the vibration changed when the APU load shifted. The smell is stronger near number 2, and there's a wet line under the coupling. The lounge door opened behind them. 2 VIP passengers stepped out, annoyed and curious. One held a phone low at her side, already recording. A flight attendant stood frozen on the stairs, her smile held in place too long. Ray's radio crackled against his belt. Dispatch wanted an update. Blake stared at Marcus for a long second. Not because he believed him, because the terms had been too specific for a baggage kid. That made him angrier. You watched a few videos online? Blake asked. Picked up some words? Marcus said nothing. He only lowered his phone and slipped it into his pocket before Ray could reach for it. The orange tag shifted with the movement, and for half a second its faded edge showed beneath his vest. Ray saw it. Blake saw Ray see it. Give me the phone, Ray said. Marcus looked at him. I sent the photo to maintenance. Ray's mouth opened, then closed. The tiny pause was quick, but not quick enough. The woman with the phone stopped recording for a heartbeat, sensing the room had changed without knowing why. Blake's voice dropped. You sent what? Marcus kept his shoulders straight. A picture of the coupling. To Director Cho. Ray stepped closer until only a foot of hot ramp air separated them. You don't contact Linda Cho. You don't bypass me. You don't create a safety delay because you want to feel important. Blake turned toward the cockpit, jaw locked. Clear him from my aircraft. Ray grabbed his radio and spoke into it without taking his eyes off Marcus. Need security at N742K. Trainee interfering with departure. The word security moved across the ramp faster than any engine noise. It changed faces before anyone took a step. The flight attendant lowered her eyes. The ramp worker beside the baggage cart backed away from Marcus, as if distance could protect his paycheck. Inside the lounge, the woman with the phone lifted it again, not openly, just enough to catch Ray Calder standing between a trainee and a captain with a jet waiting behind them. Marcus stayed where he was, just outside the red line, his hands visible. Blake watched from the stairs with 1 foot on the bottom step, sunglasses back on, voice cold. You wanted attention. Now you've got witnesses. Marcus looked past him to the right engine. The wet line was still there. The smell was still there. I wanted the aircraft checked. Ray laughed once, hard and fake. You wanted to make yourself important. His radio crackled again, and a security guard in a black polo came jogging from the service gate. One hand on his belt, the other raised to shield his eyes from the sun. What's the issue? Ray pointed at Marcus without looking at him. Trainee cross-chain of command. Delayed departure, took unauthorized photos of aircraft equipment, and contacted maintenance leadership without clearance. The words landed like stamps on a form. Unauthorized, delayed, interfering. Each one made the crowd lean farther away from Marcus. Blake stepped off the stairs and adjusted his headset around his neck. Ad creating panic in front of passengers. Marcus's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed even. I didn't create panic. Blake came close enough that Marcus could see his own yellow vest reflected in the lenses. No, son, you created liability. The security guard looked at Marcus's badge. Read, right? Phone. Marcus did not move. The photo is safety-related. Ray's smile vanished. The phone is company property while you're on duty if you're using it to interfere with operations. It's my phone. Then your job isn't. Ray snapped. A murmur moved through the workers. Someone near the baggage tug whispered, "Just give it to him, man." The catering boy Marcus had helped stood by the doorway, holding an empty water case against his chest, eyes wide, wanting to say something and knowing he was too small in this world to make it matter. Marcus saw him and shook his head once, not at him, but for him. Don't step into this. Blake turned toward the passengers at the lounge door with a practiced smile. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize. We have a young employee confusing enthusiasm for expertise. We'll be wheels up shortly. One of the VIP men checked his watch, irritated. The woman with the phone kept recording. Ray stepped closer and lowered his voice. Delete the picture, apologize to the captain, and maybe I write this up as poor judgment instead of insubordination. Marcus felt the orange safety tag press against his ribs. I can't delete a safety concern. Ray's eyes flicked to the spot where the tag made a small outline beneath Marcus's vest. Still carrying that old thing? The sentence hit harder than it should have. Blake caught it. What old thing? Ray reached out and tapped Marcus's chest with 2 fingers. Not enough to pull the tag free, just enough for everyone to see he could. His father's little Lucky Charm. Every ramp has one of these kids. Thinks a dead mechanic left him a magic ear. The crowd went still in a different way now. Not shock, discomfort. Even the APU seemed to thin for a second, giving the insult room to breathe. Marcus looked down at Ray's hand, then back up. Don't talk about my father. It was the only warning in his voice. Blake tilted his head. Then don't use him as an excuse to question licensed professionals. The security guard shifted his weight. Marcus, last chance. Phone on the cart. Marcus slowly reached into his pocket. For 1 second, Ray's expression relaxed. Sure he had one. Marcus brought out the phone, screen dark, and placed it face down on the baggage cart between them. He did not unlock it. Ray's mouth tightened. Unlock it. No. 1 syllable. Quiet. Final. Ray grabbed his tablet from under his arm and jabbed at the screen. Fine. We'll do this officially. He opened the maintenance board and turned it so the security guard could see the green status line. In 742K. Right engine idle roughness. Closed. No action required. See? Cleared. Blake smiled like a judge hearing the verdict he expected. There it is. The airplane is legal. The captain is satisfied. The supervisor is satisfied. The only person not satisfied is the kid with no license. Marcus's eyes dropped to the tablet. Under the green line, for less than a second before Ray tilted it away, he saw a timestamp. Closed before inspection, crew logged arrival. His stomach went cold. Ray noticed him notice. The supervisor snapped the tablet shut and pointed toward the service gate. Remove him from the aircraft area. The security guard reached for Marcus's arm. Blake turned back toward the stairs. Boarding continues. And just as Ray bent to pick up Marcus's phone from the cart, the screen lit by itself with a new message preview from Linda Cho. Marcus, send me that coupling photo again. Now. Ray's hand stopped inches above Marcus's phone. The preview glowed against the black glass, bright enough for everyone closest to the baggage cart to read it. Marcus, send me that coupling photo again. Now. For the first time all morning, Ray Calder did not have an answer ready. His thumb hovered over the screen like he could smother the message before it became real. Blake saw the pause from the stairs. What is it? Ray snapped the phone up, but not fast enough. The woman with the half-hidden recording had caught the flash of Linda Cho's name. The catering boy saw it, too. His eyes moved from the phone to Marcus, and something in his face changed from fear to hope. Marcus kept both hands where the security guard could see them. Director Cho asked for the photo, he said. Let me send it. Ray laughed too quickly. Director Cho asks for a lot of things. Doesn't mean you get to interfere with an act of departure. The phone buzzed again in Ray's hand. Same name. This time it was a call. The sound seemed small under the APU whine, but every person nearby heard it. 1 ring. 2. 3. Ray looked at Blake. Blake's expression hardened. Decline it. Marcus's eyes lifted. She's the director of maintenance. And I'm the captain in command, Blake said. This aircraft is not being delayed by a trainee with a camera. Ray pressed the red button. The ringing died. The silence it left behind felt worse than the sound. Marcus looked at his phone in Ray's hand, then at the engine. The picture is all she needs to see right now. The picture proves you took an unauthorized shot of aircraft equipment, Ray said. He turned the phone, so the dark screen faced the crowd, as if it were evidence against Marcus instead of for him. You see how this works? He creates the problem, then acts like a hero for reporting it. A few passengers shifted near the lounge door. One of them, a man with silver hair and a leather carry-on, frowned toward the right engine. He couldn't see what Marcus had seen, but he could hear the confidence leaking out of Ray's voice. Marcus drew a slow breath. The orange safety tag pressed against his chest. He slid 2 fingers into his vest pocket and pulled it out, not to show it off, just to steady himself. The cracked plastic caught the sunlight. Never sign off what still feels wrong. The faded words faced upward for 1 clean second. The catering boy read them. So did the flight attendant on the stairs. Even the security guard's eyes dropped to it. What would you have noticed first? The wet line, the wrong angle, or the one person trying hardest to hide the photo? Ray reached out. Put that away. Marcus did not flinch. My father used this tag when something wasn't safe to clear. Your father is not on this ramp, Ray said. Linda Cho is, Marcus replied quietly, and she asked for the photo. Blake stepped down from the last stair, now fully on the ramp. Unlock the phone, send nothing, and hand it to your supervisor. No. Marcus's voice was barely louder than the APU, but it carried. If that photo disappears, the aircraft still has the same problem. Ray's nostrils flared. He turned back to his tablet, swiped hard, and opened the maintenance board again. The green status line returned. N742K. Right engine idle roughness. Closed. No action required. But now, because Ray's hand shook just enough, the lower detail pane opened beneath it. For half a second, the timestamp showed in plain view. Ticket closed 10:42. Inspection crew arrival 10:57. The security guard leaned closer. Wait, why is the close time before? Ray slapped the tablet against his chest. Because systems lag. Don't start reading things you don't understand. But the damage had already entered the air. A murmur rolled through the ramp workers. One of them whispered, 15 minutes before inspection. Blake heard it and shot him a look that killed the whisper. Marcus stared at Ray. You closed it before anyone looked. Ray stepped so close Marcus could smell coffee on his breath. You don't know what you saw. The phone buzzed again in Ray's hand. Not a call this time. A new message preview slid across the screen before he could hide it. Ray, do not start in 742K until I review Marcus Reed's photo. Marcus's name sat there in clean white letters. The crowd went quiet again, not dead silent, but close. The kind of quiet that comes when people realize the story they were told may not be the story happening in front of them. Blake's jaw worked once. Turn that phone off. Ray held the power button until the screen went black. Then he looked at Marcus's orange tag, reached out, and yanked it from his fingers. The old plastic snapped against Ray's palm. Marcus took one step forward before he could stop himself. The security guard caught his arm. Ray lifted the tag between two fingers like something dirty. This is what happens when boys grow up worshiping dead mechanics, he said. They start thinking grief is a qualification. Marcus's face changed. Not anger first. Pain. Deep, old, and suddenly visible. Ray saw it and smiled like he had finally found the right wound. Maybe your father should have learned when to keep his mouth shut, too. Maybe your father should have learned when to keep his mouth shut, too. The sentence did not land on the ramp. It went through it. Through the heat. Through the APU whine. Through the polished white skin of N742K. Straight into a room Marcus had spent 2 years trying not to enter. For a second, he was not standing under the Georgia sun with a security guard's hand on his arm. He was 15 again, sitting in a plastic chair outside a hangar office while men with clean cuffs talked behind frosted glass. His mother beside him, her hands folded so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. A company lawyer saying, Mr. Reed became emotional and failed to follow procedure. A clipboard on the table. A report already written before anyone asked Earl's family what kind of man he had been. Marcus remembered the smell most of all. Burnt insulation, hot oil, rain on concrete, and his father's toolbox sitting by the wall with one orange tag still hanging from the latch, swinging a little every time someone opened the door and refused to look at it. Ray waved the tag now between 2 fingers. Look at him, he said, turning slightly so the passengers, ramp workers, and security guard could see Marcus's face. This is what happens when grief gets dressed up like expertise. Marcus breathed in through his nose. The fuel smell was still there, faint but sharper now when the wind shifted off the right engine. He wanted the tag back so badly his hand twitched once. The security guard felt it and tightened his grip. Don't, the guard warned quietly. Marcus looked at him, then at the little girl in the cabin window. She had stopped pressing her bear to the glass. Now she was staring at the adults below, trying to understand why the boy in the yellow vest looked like he had been hurt without being struck. Marcus made himself still. His father had never taught him to win arguments. Earl had taught him to keep people alive. Ray saw the restraint and mistook it for surrender. That's better. He turned the tag over, reading the faded handwriting with a sneer. Never sign off what still feels wrong. Goo. Blake gave a short breath through his nose, impatient. Ray, get him out of here. Gladly. Ray tucked Marcus's phone under his arm with the tablet, then held the tag up again. You want to honor your father? Start by not turning my ramp into a memorial service. A low sound moved through the witnesses. Not outrage. Not yet. Discomfort. One ramp worker stared at the concrete. The flight attendant's smile finally disappeared. The catering boy took half a step forward, then stopped when Ray's eyes cut toward him. Marcus saw the boy's water case trembling against his chest. So Marcus shook his head once. Stay out of it. Ray missed that small mercy. Blake did not. His mouth tightened as if Marcus's silence annoyed him more than any protest could have. Say it, Blake ordered. Marcus looked at him. Say what? Say you made a mistake. Say you saw condensation, got excited, and overstepped. Then maybe Mr. Calder lets you keep your job. Ray nodded toward the security guard. Smartest thing you'll do all day. Marcus's eyes moved to the right engine again. The wet line had not vanished. It had crept lower, catching dust along the edge of the cowling. A tiny dark bead trembled beneath it. His father had once pointed to a bead just like that on an old training rig, years before the accident, and said, "Drips don't care who signed the paper." The memory came and went like a match flare. Marcus's voice was quiet when he answered. I won't say a safe aircraft is unsafe. And I won't say an unsafe aircraft is safe. Ray's smile thinned. For the first time, the supervisor looked less amused than cornered. He shoved the orange tag into his own shirt pocket, hiding the words. Then we make the record without you. He opened the tablet again and tapped through the maintenance board. The green line filled the screen like a verdict. Closed. No action required. Ray turned it toward the passengers and crew. Official system says this aircraft is clear. Blake looked at the crowd as if that settled the universe. There, the ramp has its answer. Marcus did not move. He felt the old wound in his chest, the place where his father's name had been turned into a warning instead of a legacy. But under that wound was something harder. The little girl was still on that jet. The crew was still on that jet. And the machine was still whispering. Ray pointed toward the service gate. Escort him out. The security guard pulled Marcus one step back. The crowd parted, leaving him exposed in the open space between the baggage cart and the waiting aircraft. Blake turned toward the stairs and raised his voice for everyone to hear. Ladies and gentlemen, this interruption is over. Boarding continues. Ray lifted Marcus's lock phone in one hand and the tablet in the other. Evidence and system both under his control. Then, with Marcus held in front of everyone like the problem had finally been identified, Ray said, "Let this be a lesson to every trainee on this ramp. You do your job, or you become the delay. You do your job, or you become the delay." Ray Calder let the sentence hang over the ramp like a warning sign nailed to the air. Then he turned away from Marcus as if the matter had been settled, as if a man's dignity could be closed the same way he had closed the maintenance ticket. The security guard kept one hand on Marcus's arm and guided him toward the open space beside the baggage cart. Not out yet, just far enough in the aircraft to make him look guilty. Far enough that everyone could see him. Blake Harlan climbed 2 steps up the boarding stairs, faced the passengers at the lounge door, and gave them the calm smile of a man trained to make danger sound like inconvenience. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We're resolving an employee issue. Boarding may continue. Employee issue. Marcus heard the words and felt them turn him smaller in the eyes of the crowd. Not safety concern. Not fuel smell. Not right engine. Just employee issue. The woman with the phone lowered it slightly, uncertain now. The silver-haired passenger frowned, but still stepped toward the stairs. Behind him, the little girl in the cabin window disappeared from view, then reappeared farther back, as if someone had told her to sit down. The flight attendant touched the doorframe, glanced once at Marcus, then resumed her professional smile. Ray opened his tablet again and showed the green maintenance status to the security guard like a badge. Closed. No action required. System is clear, Ray said. Supervisor authority is clear. Captain's authority is clear. We have one trainee refusing direction. Blake looked down from the stairs. Then write him up. Ray's mouth tightened with satisfaction. He tapped fast, building the record one line at a time. Unauthorized aircraft photography. Refusal to follow supervisor instruction. Interference with VIP departure. Creating passenger concern. Each phrase appeared under Marcus's name like stones being stacked on his chest. "Sign it," Ray said, holding the tablet out. Marcus looked at the screen. His phone was still tucked under Ray's arm. The orange tag was still hidden in Ray's shirt pocket, its corner barely visible against the fabric. Two things that belonged to Marcus. Two things that could tell the truth. Neither was in his hands. "I won't sign that." Ray's eyes lifted. "You don't even want to read it?" "I read enough. This is your chance to show maturity." "Maturity isn't signing a lie." A small sound came from the ramp workers. Not laughter, a breath someone forgot to hold. Ray heard it and turned sharply, daring anyone to repeat it. No one did. The catering boy looked down at his shoes. The baggage handler who had told Marcus to give up turned his head toward the service hangar, ashamed to be seen watching. Blake came back down one step. "Mr. Reed, you are not a mechanic. You are not a pilot. You are not maintenance leadership. You are a trainee who let emotion override procedure." Marcus met his eyes. "Procedure is why I reported it." Blake's expression cooled. "Procedure is why you're leaving." Ray tapped the tablet again, harder this time. A gray box appeared beneath the incident form. Employee refused signature. He selected it before Marcus could speak. The system gave a soft confirmation beep. To the crowd, it sounded official. Final. Ray turned the screen outward. Refusal documented. The security guard shifted his grip. "Come on, Marcus." The hand was not cruel. That made it worse. It was the hand of someone following the room instead of the truth. Marcus took one step, then stopped because the wind shifted. The faint sweet fuel smell crossed the open ramp again. He looked toward the right engine. The dark bead was still there, trembling beneath the cowling. One drop waiting for gravity. One warning waiting for a listener. "Ray," Marcus said quietly. "Please don't let them start it." Ray's face hardened, but something behind his eyes flickered. Fear again. Quick. Buried. "You lost the right to advise this ramp." Blake turned toward the cockpit. "Close the door once he's clear." The flight attendant reached for the cabin door handle. The passengers inside settled into their seats. The little girl's bear pressed against the window again, smaller now behind the glass. Ray took Marcus's orange safety tag from his pocket and held it between two fingers, turning it so the faded handwriting faced the workers gathered near the baggage cart. "Before he goes," Ray said, louder now, "maybe everyone should see what happens when a trainee brings superstition to a professional operation." Marcus's chest went still. The APU whine sharpened. Blake paused on the stairs, watching. Ray lifted the tag higher, as if it were proof of Marcus's weakness instead of the one thing that had kept him standing. Ray lifted the orange safety tag higher, turning it slowly between his fingers so the whole ramp could see the faded words. "Never sign off what still feels wrong." In his hand, it no longer looked like a warning. It looked like something on trial. The APU screamed behind him. The boarding stairs trembled faintly under Blake Harlan's boots. Passengers watched from the lounge door, from the cabin windows, from the narrow shade beneath the wing. Ray smiled like a man who had finally found the easiest way to make everyone stop listening to Marcus. "This," he said, tapping the tag with one fingernail, "is not a maintenance document. It is not a work order. It is not a clearance form. It is a keepsake." He looked at Marcus. "And keepsakes don't ground aircraft." The words pulled a nervous laugh from one of the VIP men, but it died almost immediately. Marcus did not reach for the tag. He did not look at the laughing man. His eyes stayed on the engine. The wet bead under the number 2 cowling had stretched thin now, darkening the dust below it. Ray saw where Marcus was looking and stepped into his line of sight on purpose. "No," he said. "You look at me when I'm correcting you." Blake folded his arms from the stairs. "He's done looking at my engine." The security guard tightened his grip on Marcus's arm. Not rough, but final. "Come on." Marcus took one step back. The crowd shifted with him, parting just enough to make the walk feel like an escort and a sentence. Ray followed, still holding the tag up. "Let every trainee here learn something. You do not use a family tragedy to pretend you outrank a supervisor. You do not text the director of maintenance because you want to feel brave. And you do not embarrass a captain in front of passengers because you smelled pavement in July." Marcus's face stayed still, but his breath caught once at the word tragedy. The catering boy heard it. The flight attendant heard it. Even the woman recording lowered her phone a little, no longer hungry for drama, suddenly aware that she was filming a man being cut open in public. Blake came down one more step. Mr. Calder, secure the object, document the refusal, and clear him out. The object. Marcus's father's last tag had become the object. Ray pressed the orange tag flat against his tablet, pinning it beneath his thumb while he opened the incident form again. Employee used personal item to support false safety claim, he said as he typed. Refused lawful instruction. Created operational delay. A ramp worker whispered, "That's not what happened." Ray's head snapped toward him. "You want to add your name to the report?" The worker went pale and looked away. The whisper vanished. Ray smiled without warmth. "That's what I thought." Marcus looked at the worker, not with blame, but with something quieter. Understanding. This was how silence survived. Not because everyone agreed. Because everyone had rent. Everyone had badges. Everyone had somebody at home who needed them not to be brave today. The little girl's face appeared again in the cabin window. Her lips moved behind the glass. Marcus could not hear her, but he saw the shape of the question she asked her mother. Why? He looked down at the concrete where the security guard had pulled him to the edge of the service lane. Then the wind shifted. The smell came stronger this time, sweet and oily, sliding under the heat. Marcus turned his head back toward the right engine. Ray shoved the tablet toward him. "Last chance. Say you were wrong." Blake's voice cut in before Marcus could answer. "No, don't give him a stage. Remove him." Ray leaned closer anyway, his voice low enough to be cruel and loud enough to be heard. "Your father lost his career chasing feelings. You are not going to lose mine doing the same thing." Marcus finally looked at him. The old pain was there, but it did not bend him. He wasn't chasing feelings. That was all. One sentence, quiet enough to make Ray look smaller for needing to shout over it. Ray's mouth tightened. He shoved the orange tag into the tablet case and snapped it shut. The plastic corner caught in the zipper, bending under the pressure. Marcus's hand moved half an inch before he stopped it himself. The woman with the phone inhaled. The catering boy whispered, "Don't break it." Ray ignored him. He turned to Blake and raised the sealed tablet case like proof that he had locked away both the evidence and the memory. "Ramp is clear, Captain." Blake nodded once, satisfied. Finally, he climbed the stairs, stepped into the cockpit, and pulled the headset over his ears. The flight attendant hesitated at the cabin door. Blake glanced back at her. "Close it." She obeyed. The door thudded into place. The sound went through Marcus like a vault shutting. Ray pointed toward the service gate. "Walk him out." The security guard began to guide Marcus away. Behind them, through the cockpit glass, Blake reached toward the start panel. His voice came over the ramp frequency, calm and absolute. "Engine 2 start." Marcus stopped, so suddenly the guard nearly bumped into him. The first high metallic whine rose from the right side of N742K, and at the same instant, Marcus's dark phone, still trapped under Ray's tablet case, vibrated hard enough to make the orange tag buzz against the zipper. The vibration under Ray Calder's tablet case was small at first, just a trapped buzz against the zipper, but Marcus heard it beneath the rising whine of Engine 2. The orange safety tag, bent inside the case with his locked phone, rattled like a warning trying to get out. Marcus stopped in the service lane. The security guard tugged his arm. "Move." Marcus did not move. "That's Director Cho." Ray looked down at the case as if it had betrayed him. The phone buzzed again. Longer this time. The case shivered in his hand. Blake's voice came through the ramp frequency, smooth and commanding. "Engine 2 start." The right side of N742K began to spool. A thin metallic whine rose through the heat, sharper than before, slicing through the murmurs and the idling carts. Marcus turned toward the aircraft, so fast the guard loosened his grip by instinct. "Stop it," Marcus said. Not loud, not dramatic, just terrified enough to make the catering boy look up. Ray snapped, "Do not start this again." Marcus pointed with his free hand. "Listen." For 2 seconds, nobody did. Blake's silhouette moved behind the cockpit glass, one hand near the panel, headset tight over his ears. The flight attendant stood just inside the closed cabin door, watching through the small window. The little girl's bare pressed against the glass again. Then the engine's sound caught. Once. Twice. A rough flutter buried inside the rising spin. Marcus felt the air change before the crowd understood why his face had gone still. The phone buzzed a third time. Ray jammed the tablet case under his arm. "Ignore it." "Ray," Marcus said, his voice lower now. "Open the case." "No." Blake's voice came over the radio again, irritated. "What's the hole now?" Ray pressed his radio. "No hole, Captain. Ramp is clear." The words had barely left his mouth when the first cockpit chime hit. Not the polite sound from before. This one was sharp. A hard electronic warning that punched through the APU whine and made every head turn toward the aircraft. Blake looked down at his panel. His hand stopped moving. Then came the second tone. Louder. Faster. Inside the cockpit, red light reflected against the glass. The flight attendant's face changed. The passengers stopped shifting in their seats. The little girl's bear slipped from the window. For one stretched heartbeat, nobody spoke. Then the cockpit alarm erupted. A rapid, furious sound poured through the aircraft and out onto the ramp. So loud, even the engine seemed to fall behind it. On the cockpit display, red blocks flashed in quick succession. Engine fault. Fuel leak. Vibration. Oil press low. The words lit Blake's face from below. His jaw opened, but no command came out. The woman recording lowered her phone for half a second, stunned, then raised it again with both hands. The silver-haired passenger stepped backward from the lounge door. The ramp worker who had been too afraid to speak whispered, "Oh my God." Ray did not move. His radio hung at his shoulder, hissing static. The tablet case was still under his arm. Inside it, Marcus's phone buzzed again, now almost absurd beneath the scream of the alarm. The orange tag clicked faintly against the zipper. Everyone could hear everything now. The alarm. The phone. The engine winding down unevenly. Marcus's breathing. The silence between people who had chosen not to listen. If you were standing on that ramp, who would you watch first? The captain in the cockpit, the supervisor holding the phone, or the trainee who had been begging them to stop? Blake finally found his voice. It cracked through the radio, thinner than before. "We've got a sensor fault." Marcus looked up at him. "Shut it down." Blake's head turned toward the window. For the first time all day, he did not look at Marcus like a baggage kid. He looked at him like a question he did not want answered. Ray swallowed. Could be a glitch. The security guard slowly let go of Marcus's arm. No one told him to. He just did. The flight attendant opened the cabin door a few inches, alarm still shrieking behind her. "Captain." Blake didn't answer. His eyes kept moving between the flashing panel and the right engine. The crowd had changed shape around Marcus. They were no longer leaning away from him. They were leaning toward the aircraft, toward the red light, toward the warning that had arrived exactly where he said it would. At the far end of the ramp, a white maintenance cart shot out from behind the hangar, tires chirping against the concrete. Linda Cho stood on the passenger side before it had fully stopped, hair pulled back, safety vest half zipped, eyes locked on N742K. She took in the cockpit alarm, Ray's frozen face, Marcus standing empty-handed, and the tablet case tucked under Ray's arm. Her voice cut through the siren with the kind of authority even Blake could not pretend not to hear. "Nobody touches that aircraft. And Ray, open that case. Now! Ray, open that case. Now!" Linda Cho did not raise her voice. She didn't have to. The alarm still screamed from N742K, red light flashing through the cockpit glass, but the ramp seemed to hear her over everything. Ray Calder stood frozen with the tablet case under his arm, Marcus's locked phone and the bent orange safety tag trapped inside it like evidence he had almost buried. "Linda," Ray said, forcing a laugh that had no air in it. "This is being handled." Linda stepped off the maintenance cart before it fully settled. "By who?" She pointed at the aircraft. The captain who tried to start a flagged engine, or the supervisor holding a trainee's phone. Blake Harlan appeared in the cockpit window, headset still on, face lit by the red warnings. "Director Cho, we're showing a possible sensor fault." Linda looked up at him once. "Shut the aircraft down completely." "We're already completely, Captain." Blake's mouth closed. The alarm kept screaming for another few seconds. Then the engine whine began to fall unevenly, rough and reluctant, until the ramp heard the silence underneath it. Linda turned back to Ray. "Open it." Ray's hand moved slowly. The zipper rasped like sandpaper. The orange safety tag slipped out first, bent at one corner. Marcus's eyes followed it, but he did not reach. Linda did. She picked it up, read the faded words, and for the first time, her face changed. Not surprise. Recognition. "Earl Reed," she said quietly. Marcus looked at her. Ray went pale. Blake leaned closer to the cockpit window. Linda held the tag with care, then took Marcus's phone from the case and handed it to him. "Unlock it." Ray found his voice. He took an unauthorized photo. Linda didn't look at him. "He took a safety photo after you closed the ticket." The words landed harder than the alarm. Marcus unlocked the phone with a thumb that almost shook, opened the image, and turned it toward her. Linda zoomed in once. Twice. Her jaw tightened. Then she walked straight to engine number 2. 2 mechanics from the maintenance cart followed with inspection lights, but she was already crouching, eyes fixed on the coupling beneath the cowling. The crowd moved with her without meaning to. Passengers stepped from the lounge door. Ramp workers came closer. The flight attendant stood on the stairs, one hand pressed to her chest. Linda aimed a light under the engine. A small wet streak shone silver against the metal, and beneath it, a dark drop trembled on the lower edge. She looked at the photo again, then at the part itself. "Same coupling," she said. One of the mechanics swallowed. "Safety wire is out of position." Linda nodded once. "And the residue is fresh." Ray spoke too quickly. "It could have developed after the ticket was closed." Linda turned. "Then why was the ticket closed before the inspection crew arrived?" The ramp went still. Ray blinked. Linda held out her hand. "Tablet." He didn't move. The security guard, who had been holding Marcus minutes earlier, now looked at Ray. "Sir." Ray handed over the tablet. Linda opened the maintenance board with 2 tabs and turned it outward for everyone to see. In 742K. Right engine idle roughness. Closed. No action required. Below it, the time sat in black and white. Ticket closed 10:42. Inspection crew arrival 10:57. Linda's voice cut clean through the heat. This was closed 15 minutes before anyone inspected the aircraft. A murmur broke across the ramp. The woman recording whispered, "Oh my God." Blake came down from the cockpit slowly, each step heavier than the last. "I relied on the board." Linda looked at him. Marcus Reed relied on the aircraft. Blake stopped. The little girl's bear appeared again in the cabin window, motionless behind the glass. Linda faced the passengers, the crew, Ray, Blake, and finally Marcus. He smelled fuel. He saw the coupling. He documented it. He contacted maintenance leadership. Every single thing he did was the correct safety action. Ray shook his head once. "He's a trainee." Linda stepped closer to him. He was right. 3 words. No dokerashchen. No sofnis. Ray's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Linda lifted Marcus's phone so the photo faced the crowd, then pointed to the real coupling beneath the engine. This photo was taken before engine start. The cockpit warnings confirmed the same area, he flagged. That is not emotion. That is not grief. That is observation. Blake's face had lost all color now. Would it have? He could not finish. Linda did it for him. If that engine had fully spooled with an active fuel leak on the ramp, you could have put every passenger, every crew member, and every person standing out here at risk. The flight attendant covered her mouth. The silver-haired passenger stepped away from Blake as if distance could rewrite his trust. Ray looked toward the service gate, but there was nowhere to go. The system he had used as a shield now glowed in Linda's hand like a confession. Marcus stood in the same spot where he had been humiliated, empty-handed no longer. Linda walked back to him and placed the orange tag gently into his palm. "Your father taught you well." Marcus closed his fingers around it, and the old plastic clicked once. Behind him, the security guard lowered his eyes. Blake looked at Marcus for a long moment, not as a delay, not as a baggage kid, but as the person who had stopped him from making the worst mistake of his career. Linda turned to Ray, her voice colder than the alarm had been. "Operations office. Now." "And Captain Harlan, this aircraft is grounded until I say otherwise." Ray stared at Marcus, then at the crowd that was no longer on his side. For the first time all morning, nobody moved when Ray expected them to. Linda Cho did not wait for Ray Calder to find his voice. She pointed once toward the operations building, and this time the gesture carried more authority than every order he had given all morning. Walk. Ray looked at Blake, then at the passengers, then at the ramp workers whose eyes no longer dropped when he searched for obedience. Nobody rescued him with silence. He moved first, slow and stiff, the tablet clutched in one hand like it might still protect him. Linda turned to the security guard. Stay with him until HR arrives. The guard nodded, face tight with shame. Yes, ma'am. Ray's head snapped back. HR. Linda's expression did not change. And safety compliance. And legal. You closed a maintenance concern before inspection, suppressed a safety photo, declined my call, and tried to remove the person who raised the warning. This is no longer a ramp issue. The words struck differently because she did not shout them. They sounded like doors locking. Ray's shoulders sank a fraction. The man who had held Marcus's phone, his tag, and his future in one hand now looked suddenly unsure where to put his own. Blake stepped down from the last stair, his captain's hat hanging loose at his side. The alarm had stopped, but its absence left the ramp hollow. Passengers stood in small clusters near the lounge door. The little girl had been carried down the stairs by her mother, bear tucked under one arm, eyes fixed on Marcus, as if she were trying to understand how someone so quiet had made all the loud people stop. Blake cleared his throat. Director Cho, I prefer to discuss this inside. Linda looked at him. You question him out here. Blake's face tightened. This is not the time for theater. Marcus looked down at the orange safety tag at his palm. The bent corner had left a white stress mark in the plastic. He rubbed it gently with his thumb, not to fix it, only to feel that it was still there. It doesn't have to be theater, Marcus said. His voice was low, but the ramp heard it. It just shouldn't be hidden. Blake's eyes moved to him. For a moment, pride fought with fear. Then Blake looked toward the cabin, toward the passengers who had trusted him, toward the crew who had watched him dismiss a warning because of the uniform it came from. He swallowed. Mr. Reed. The words sounded unfamiliar in his mouth. Not kid. Not trainee. Not baggage. Mr. Reed. The ramp workers went still. I was wrong to ignore your warning, Blake said. I was wrong to speak to you the way I did. Your actions prevented a dangerous situation from getting worse. The apology did not erase the insult. It did not straighten the bent tag, but it landed in the same air where the humiliation had started, and that mattered. Marcus nodded once. He did not smile. Thank you, Captain. Ray stopped near the operations door, hearing it, and his face twisted like the apology had hurt him more than the alarm. Linda turned to the assembled crew. Effective immediately, no aircraft departs this terminal with an unresolved ramp safety concern. I don't care who the passenger is. I don't care what the schedule says. If a ramp worker, cleaner, caterer, fueler, trainee, or captain sees something, the aircraft waits until maintenance clears it in person. She pointed toward the lounge glass, where dispatch staff had gathered behind it. All ticket closures from this week are being audited. All supervisor overrides are frozen. Every employee on this ramp will be retrained on stop work authority before the next VIP departure. A murmur passed through the workers, but this time it was not fear. It was recognition, cautious and new. The sound of a room realizing a rule had finally been written for the people who usually paid for other people's mistakes. The catering boy looked at Marcus, then down at his own badge, standing a little taller than before. The woman who had been recording lowered her phone completely. I'm sending this to the passengers, she said softly to the silver-haired man. They should know who kept them safe. Linda glanced at Marcus, then at the tag in his hand. You did the right thing when it cost you something. Marcus looked toward in 742K, grounded now, quiet under the sun. My father used to say, safety only matters before everyone agrees it mattered. Linda's eyes softened. Earl said that. Marcus looked at her. You knew him. I worked 2 hangars over when he was still teaching half this airport how to listen. She let that sit for one breath, not as a reveal, but as a restoration. Then she nodded toward the operations building where Ray had disappeared. There will be a formal report, and your name will not be in it, as the delay. The word delay seemed to lose its teeth. Blake stood beside the stairs, smaller without the engine behind him. Ray's tablet was gone. Marcus's phone was back in his pocket. The orange tag was back in his hand. Linda looked at him one last time before walking toward operations. "Marcus Reed," she said, "have you ever thought about getting certified?" "Marcus Reed," Linda Cho said, "have you ever thought about getting certified?" The question hung in the hot ramp air, longer than the alarm had. Marcus looked at her, then down at the orange safety tag in his palm. The bent corner caught the sunlight, a small white scar in old plastic. "Every day," he said, "just never had the money to make it real." Linda nodded once, as if she had already expected the answer. "Then we make it real the right way." 3 weeks later, the ramp looked different, even though the concrete was the same. N742K was no longer parked near the VIP gate. The aircraft had been pulled from service, inspected, repaired, and reviewed so many times that its tail number had become less of a flight record and more of a lesson. Ray Calder's name had disappeared from the supervisor schedule. No one announced it over a speaker. No one needed to. His empty office window, the clear desk, and a new safety hotline poster beside the dispatch board said enough. Captain Blake Harlan returned to the terminal once during that first week, not in sunglasses, not with a headset around his neck, but in a plain shirt for a safety review. When he passed Marcus in the corridor, he stopped. For a moment, the old pride rose in his face out of habit. Then he lowered his eyes to Marcus's badge and said, "Mr. Reed." Not loud, not dramatic, but the ramp workers heard it. Marcus nodded. "Captain." That was all. He did not need Blake broken. He only needed the truth to stay standing after Blake walked away. By the end of the month, Linda called every employee from baggage, fueling, catering, cleaning, dispatch, cabin service, and maintenance into the hangar. No leather chairs, no VIP glass, just folding seats on concrete, orange cones by the doors, and a whiteboard rolled in front of a quiet aircraft with its panels open. On the board, in black marker, someone had written, "Stop work authority belongs to everyone." Marcus stood in the back at first, out of habit. Denise stood beside him in her best church blouse, hands clasped around her purse. She had taken the morning off from the laundry, and Marcus had argued with her about it until she said, "Baby, I missed too many moments because I was trying to survive the next bill. I'm not missing this one." The little catering boy sat 2 rows ahead, badge straightened, eyes bright. The flight attendant from N742K stood near the aisle. The security guard who had held Marcus's arm sat with his hands folded, looking at the floor until Marcus touched his shoulder once and kept walking. Forgiveness did not need a speech. Sometimes it was just not letting shame become another locked door. Linda stepped to the front with a folder in her hands. "This terminal failed a test," she said. "Not because a machine warned us. Machines warn us all the time. We failed when we decided the warning mattered less because of who spoke it." The hangar stayed silent. Linda opened the folder. "Starting today, our trainee certification scholarship will carry the name of Earl Reed." Marcus's mother made a sound so small most people missed it. Marcus did not. He reached for her hand. Linda looked toward him. "The first recipient is Marcus Reed." Applause rose slowly, then fully, not the quick, polite kind, but the kind that gathers weight as people understand what they are clapping for. Marcus walked forward because Linda had asked him to, but every step felt like he was carrying 2 men, himself, and a father whose name had once been buried under someone else's report. Linda handed him the scholarship letter. On top was a new training badge with his name printed cleanly beneath the words A&P candidate. Marcus touched the letters with his thumb, then reached into his vest pocket and took out the orange safety tag. He did not put it away this time. He walked to the whiteboard and clipped it beneath the sentence about stop work authority. The old tag swung once, catching the hangar light. "Never sign off what still feels wrong." The catering boy raised his hand. "Mr. Reed." Marcus turned, surprised by the title. "Yeah." The boy pointed toward the tag. "How do you know when something feels wrong?" Marcus looked at the open aircraft, at the rows of workers, at his mother wiping her eyes, at Linda standing quietly beside the board. Then he looked back at the boy. "You listen before you're forced to hear it," he said. "And when you see something, you say something before the machine has to scream." Months later, a new group of ramp trainees would walk into that hangar for their first safety class. They would see the orange tag before they saw the manuals. Some would ask why a cracked piece of plastic had a place of honor above the board. And Marcus, now wearing a cleaner badge and the same quiet eyes, would tell them about a day when a young man was called a delay because he refused to let an engine start. He would not tell it like revenge. He would tell it like responsibility. Outside, jets would keep rising into the Atlanta sky, silver and loud, and full of people who never knew how many unseen hands had kept them safe. Inside, the orange tag would move gently whenever the hangar doors opened, no longer a relic of grief, no longer a thing to be mocked, but a promise. Not to judge the warning by the uniform, not to measure truth by rank, and never, ever to ignore the person brave enough to say, "Stop before it is too late."